Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The teacher took the boy's lunch every day, but one day his father put this in his backpack. Every lunchtime, in the small school in the modest neighborhood where Malik lived, Mr. Lemoyne delicately placed a small cloth bag on the boy's desk. This bag contained a hot meal, carefully prepared, often simple but always comforting. Homemade soup, a slice of bread, sometimes a piece of fruit. 10-year-old Malik was a quiet and reserved boy, a child who seemed to carry within him a world he dared not reveal. Malik's life wasn't easy. His father, a factory worker, worked 12 hours a day, sometimes more, to make ends meet. Fatigue marked his features, and so did worry. He often came home late, his hands calloused and his eyes heavy. In their small apartment with worn walls, food was regularly in short supply. For Malik, lunch at school was sometimes the only real hot meal of the day. Mr. Lemoyne had long noticed that shifty gaze, that shadow of fatigue clinging to Malik's face. One day, seeing that the child was barely eating, he decided to take action. Without speaking about it, so as not to stigmatize or humiliate him, he began bringing him lunch. This discreet gesture, almost invisible to others, was for him a way of offering a little warmth during the boy's cold day. But that day, as Malik was getting ready for school, his father slipped something unusual into the inside pocket of his backpack. It wasn't a sandwich, nor a piece of fruit, nor a can of food. It was an object laden with silence and memories, an old gold watch, tarnished by time. A watch that belonged to his own father, Malik's grandfather, a man he had always admired but rarely spoken about, as if that memory were too fragile or too painful to share. When Malik opened his backpack during recess, his fingers first brushed against the watch, then slowly pulled it out. He felt the weight of the cold metal, and his eyes widened at the inscription engraved on the back. "To my son, so that time never forgets you." This message, simple yet charged with deep emotion, resonated within him like a voice from the past. Malik, who didn't know his grandfather well, suddenly felt a mysterious connection, as if this gift broke the distance between generations, as if time had momentarily suspended its course. Throughout the day, Malik never took his eyes off the watch. Each tick seemed to whisper a forgotten story, invisible memories that spoke to him of love, struggle, and patience. When he met Mr. Lemoyne's kind gaze, he knew he could finally open up, express the burden he had been silently carrying. Little by little, Malik began to speak. He recounted how his father worked himself to exhaustion, but always came home tired, his heart heavy with worry for his family. He explained that his grandfather, once a strong and authoritative man, was now battling an illness that was slowly erasing his memories, leaving behind a void that was difficult to fill. Mr. Lemoyne understood that this hot meal was no longer just a material aid. It was a bridge, a fragile light in the solitude of Malik and his father. He realized that the real challenge was not limited to nourishing the body, but to warming hearts and building bonds. With this new understanding, he decided to do things differently. He began organizing regular meetings between students and families, creating a space where everyone could share, listen, and find support. Little by little, the school became a place of exchange and solidarity, where human warmth healed invisible wounds. As the months passed, a slow change took place in Malik. The boy who once walked with his head down, his shoulders hunched under the weight of his silences, gradually straightened up. Each morning, as he fastened the old watch on his wrist, he felt that he was wearing much more than just an object. The watch, a little too large for his frail arm, seemed to absorb all his fears and doubts, like a protective talisman against the uncertainty of the world around him. This small, tarnished gold watch became his landmark, a living link to his roots, to his family's past, which he was slowly learning to know. At school, his eyes brightened, his smile, initially shy, broadened. His classmates noticed this subtle change, this new confidence that created an aura of gentleness and courage around him. But what had begun as a simple gesture, a hot meal discreetly delivered by Mr. Lemoyne, now extended beyond the school. A chain of solidarity had been woven, invisible but powerful, between the neighborhood families. Neighbors began exchanging meals, advice, and kind words. Everyone was doing their bit, warming the weary hearts of this community a little more. At home, Malik found a father who was less withdrawn, more present. Every evening, his father's tired but proud gaze met his son's, and the old watch became like a silent language between them. The silence that had weighed on their home for so long seemed to be slowly crumbling, letting in the light of a budding complicity. One autumn evening, as the golden light of sunset filtered through the window and the noise of traffic had subsided, they sat side by side over a thin soup, shared with humble simplicity. Malik, his heart pounding, finally dared to ask the question that had been burning on his lips for weeks, perhaps years. "Dad, were you afraid of Grandpa?" The father almost jumped, his eyes searching elsewhere, as if to avoid this too heavy memory. Then, in a breath, he answered, his voice trembling with emotion and fatigue. "Yes, Malik. I was scared. Grandfather was a hard man, very hard. He never showed his feelings. He demanded everything, without ever explaining why. But he loved his family, in a way we don't always understand. He just didn't know how to show his love in any way other than through discipline." The silence that followed was laden with an ancient weight, but also with a hidden tenderness. Malik felt a bond forming between them, fragile but real. For the first time, he understood that strength was not measured solely by muscle or toughness, but by the courage to open one's heart, to face one's fears, and to speak the truth. This revelation marked a turning point. Little by little, the invisible walls that separated them began to fall. The father, once distant, began to tell childhood stories, memories of his grandfather, anecdotes that were often funny, sometimes sad, but always full of humanity. Malik, in turn, began to share his dreams, his hopes, his doubts. Meanwhile, Mr. Lemoyne couldn't help but observe Malik closely. Day after day, he perceived a subtle but profound change in the boy's gaze. Where once there had been a certain reserve, almost a shyness that kept Malik silent, a new light was beginning to emerge, a curiosity, a desire to open up. This boy, who had always kept himself a little to the side of the class, seemed to be gradually finding a place, a voice. Touched by this development, Mr. Lemoyne decided to extend an even warmer hand. He invited Malik to join a small writing club he hosted after school, a quiet space where a few students came to write down their thoughts, dreams, and fears. It was a place of expression and freedom, far from the constraints of the school curriculum. At first, Malik was hesitant. He had always believed that words were dangerous territory, a world where he risked getting lost or being judged. But very quickly, he discovered a different truth. He could finally put his emotions, his inner stories, onto the blank page, without fear. Words became windows onto his soul, a refuge where his dreams took shape. He wrote his first poems, simple but sincere, about solitude, about the weight of silence, about that little gold watch that never left him. In his stories, the watch came to life, becoming a sentinel of time, a bridge between generations, a witness to the hopes and struggles passed down from father to son. Each sentence vibrated with a melancholic sweetness, a call for understanding. Mr. Lemoyne, for his part, found new energy in Malik. After more than 20 years of teaching, he sometimes felt tired, the burden of a routine that took him away from the true reasons for his profession. But with Malik, he rediscovered his original passion, that of opening doors, revealing hidden talents, building human bridges. An important day arrived. At a parent-teacher conference, Malik spoke in front of the entire class and several families gathered. Silence fell over the room, hanging on his words. His voice trembled slightly, but he spoke with an honesty and strength that touched everyone's heart. "This watch isn't just an object," he said slowly. "It's the passing of time, of course, but it's also the time we give ourselves to love each other, to understand each other. I want my father to know that I'm proud of him, even when he's tired, even when he seems far away, because I know he does everything for us, for me." A shudder ran through the room. Malik's father, silently standing in a corner, felt his eyes mist over. The other parents exchanged emotional glances, some sniffing discreetly, others smiling with a newfound admiration for this boy who had just broken the barriers of silence. This opening became a catalyst. Little by little, other families opened up, telling their own stories, sharing their struggles, their hopes. The small school, once a simple place of learning, transformed into a true center of solidarity and respect. Children and parents discovered the power of listening, the power of sharing. And still, the gold watch shone softly on Malik's wrist, a silent reminder that, even in the harshness of time, love and transmission remain the most precious treasures that one can receive and offer. A few years had passed since that first shared lunch. Malik was no longer the shy, quiet boy everyone knew. At 16, he had grown, not only in height. His shoulders had broadened, his voice had become more assertive, but above all in confidence and maturity. He still wore the watch on his wrist, even if the gold-plated metal had lost some of its luster, marked by time and the small bumps of everyday life. This watch was no longer just an object. It had become a silent witness to his journey, a tangible link to his family history, a symbol of resilience. His father, now, seemed to have found a gentler balance between his long work hours and his life at home. The fatigue hadn't disappeared, of course, but he often came home with a lighter smile, and above all, with the determination to no longer let the weight of the world bury his presence with Malik. On nights when he walked through the door, worn but determined, he found a son who had grown up, able to listen to him, to understand him, and sometimes even to offer him a simple smile, a gesture of encouragement that seemed to recharge his strength. The house, small but warm, was no longer a place of heavy silence. It had become a refuge where words, sometimes difficult to pronounce, flowed more easily. Malik, armed with what he had learned at school and at the writing club, now knew that stories, those we live, those we tell, had the power to heal. For his part, Mr. Lemoyne, who was slowly approaching retirement, viewed this transformation with humble but sincere pride. This gesture, initially so simple, bringing a hot meal to a hungry child, had triggered a chain of small, silent revolutions. The school had gradually transformed into a place of mutual support, a space where each child could find a little warmth, recognition, and understanding. A place where difference became an asset rather than an obstacle. As for Malik, he had discovered an unsuspected power in words. He continued to write poems, stories, diaries in which he recorded his thoughts, his doubts, his dreams. His dearest dream was to become a writer, or perhaps a teacher, to pass on and turn the light that had shone on him in his darkest moments. He wanted to be that beacon for other young people, a guide for those who, like him, were seeking a path in the darkness. One morning, as the sun filtered gently through the curtains of his room, Malik raised his wrist and looked at the old watch that still seemed too big. He thought about time, time that never stops, that sweeps everything away in its path. But he also understood that, despite its inevitable passage, this time could be shaped, changed, transformed by love, courage, and the will not to be crushed. Every minute, every hour, every day offered a new chance to write her own story. A story of self-improvement, hope, and light. And in this small neighborhood, often marked by the harshness of life, hope now shone brighter than ever, carried by a boy, a watch, and the invisible force of solidarity and transmission.